Hello, members of the board. We are Team 47 and we are here today to address the central question: how can Pon Holdings secure its future in an era defined by AI and digital ecosystems? Our recommendation covers 3 chapters. First, we diagnose why your current operating model is straining under the weight of your mobility ambition. Second, we propose a configuration that deepens your mobility core while building a digital backbone. And finally, we outline the execution roadmap to organize, govern, and measure this transition. Let's start with Pon today. You have aggregated over 10 billion in revenue, uniting over 120 companies under a clear purpose: keeping people and cities moving. Applying the corporate strategy triangle reveals that in terms of resources and businesses, you are strong, with premium brands like Gazelle and Audi, and deep capital pockets. You have correctly focused your business on the high-growth mobility sector. But the base of the triangle, the organization, is lagging behind. Your heritage is that of a trader, a collection of autonomous, decentralized units. While this fostered entrepreneurship in the past, today it creates fragmentation with IT systems siloed and disconnected governance. This creates strain in the center. Because the organization cannot effectively coordinate these resources, the corporate advantage, where the whole is greater than the sum of its part, is not yet fully realized. If we zoom in on your portfolio, the root cause of that strain becomes immediately visible. Strategically, your logic is sound. As the green dots show, all 5 clusters from Pon Bike to automotive retail operate within the same mobility domain. You have successfully achieved high relatedness, meaning the potential for shared customers and cross-business synergies is massive. However, looking at the operational reality in the row below, it is dominated by red. Digital and organizational integration is lagging. While your digital lab, Newcraft, has delivered over 50 digital channels, they remain isolated point solutions sitting on incompatible IT stacks. You have built digital channels, but not a digital backbone. This brings us to a critical tension. Digital and AI are currently acting as a double-edged sword for Pon. In the green top row, we see the reinforcers. You already possess high-volume proprietary data from swap feeds and BMS, scalable digital platforms like bike leasing and mobility cards, and telematics partnerships such as Webfleet. You have proven AI models in your data lab that can be transferred across brands. These are the engines of your future corporate advantage. But they are being held back by the red bottom row, the fragmenters. Externally, your reliance on Volkswagen's Cariad for vehicle software creates a dependency you do not fully control. Internally, your decentralized structure means you have multiple digital projects, but no single data platform. You are effectively building islands of innovation. The root cause is visible at the bottom. You are currently stuck in the transition between your trader heritage, which rewards autonomy, and the architect logic required for digital ecosystems. This identity tension is what prevents you from capturing the full value of the topic.
So on the left side, the upside is that by concentrating all 5 clusters into mobility domain, you tighten your strategic relatedness. So essentially, shared fleet and B2B customers and brands means that VW client can also be a Gazelle client or BMS client. And the shift from one-off car sale to leasing and subscriptions improves the overall business model quality. On the right, we do see the bill. So with fewer industrial buffers, Pon is more exposed to cyclical mobility sectors, EV transition risk, and leasing economics that are sensitive to interest rate and residual values. The fragmented IT and weak shared KPIs may also make the synergies harder to realize. So at the bottom, there's the verdict. So, market is attractive, and much of the cost is already paid out. But Pon is still following the better off test. So you carry the coordination costs without fully capturing the synergy reward. So to understand how Pon could improve its mobility ambition, we need to look at 2 hypothetical engines. So on the left, we do see Exploit engine. That's Pon's traditional superpower dominant automotive distribution. A strong dealer footprint, a globally established bike brands like Gazelle and Santa Cruz. The mindset here is short cycle efficient. More inventory, protect margins, and run dealer network. This engine funds the whole group. On the right side, we do see the Explorer engine Pon has begun to assemble. So think of BMS leasing, early multimodal mobility offers, and emerging data and AI-enabled services. These are not yet mature engines. They are exploratory actions that require long cycle platform thinking, investments into interoperability, and unified data foundation. PON essentially has the right building blocks, but no integrated operating model to connect these two logics. So trader-style siloed governance still dominates. So exploration cannot scale at the mobility ecosystem remains more aspirational. The next move should be more about unified operating model and digital backbone that allows PON to exploit today's proven businesses while systematically exploring tomorrow's scalable mobility platform. So what is the path forward here then? So to resolve the strain we just diagnosed, we propose a strategic choice built on two interlinked pillars. On the left, we refine the portfolio using purpose filter. We stop viewing all the mobility assets as equal. Instead, we prioritize the businesses you fully control, like PON Bike and BMS. Because you own the IP and the data here, they must become your primary growth drivers. For automotive, where you have less control, we focus more on the fleet and after-sales services that complement the multimodal core. But a refined portfolio is just a list of assets without a right side, a unified digital backbone. So we must stop thinking in isolated digital channels. We need to share a data foundation that spans all PON-controlled assets, connecting bike, BMS, and retail data into a single view. For partners like VW and Europcar, we don't try to control their legacy systems, we connect via modular API. This backbone is a critical mechanism that converts your mobility narrative into retail commercial value, unlocking the 1 + 1 is greater than 2 advantage.
Geographically, executing this requires a dual-speed strategy. On one hand, Europe is a scale engine with undeniable structural advantages, for example, a projected market of 10 billion euros, significant tax incentives, as well as a dense dealer network through which you already serve 600,000 employees. The strategy here is aggressive scaling, using AI not only to extract insights, but also to automate and optimize demand forecasting and operation. On the other hand, the US must be treated as a learning lab, since the environment is structurally different from the European one. For example, the infrastructure is fragmented, and the tax incentives that drive European leasing are not there yet. So it's important to avoid a copy and paste mass rollout of the European model. Instead, it's important to understand customer behavior through B2B pilots with large employers, while keeping the majority of capital allocation to Europe, which is a proven profit pool and AI ready for scale. Now, how to fund this? The good news is you've already done the heavy lifting. By divesting industrial assets like PEPP, you have freed up material capital and managerial band, but at the same time, you have removed your historical diversification buffer, exposing you to the cyclicality of the automotive sector and the inventory volatility we see in the bike market. Therefore, we propose redeploying this capital strategically into absorptive capacity. For example, funding a group-wide data lake or an AI center of excellence. These aren't just IT projects, but the engine for digital efficiency. For example, using AI to optimize fleet analytics and predictive maintenance, you protect your margins even where market volume dips. Therefore, this aligns with the proven shrink-to-grow logic. You have shrunk your industrial portfolio to grow the digital mobility core. A strategic clarification is needed regarding Europcar. On paper, it's the missing piece to PON's ecosystem, providing the flexible fleet scale necessary to complete the mobility puzzle. But the reality is that PON only holds 7%, not controlling the board nor the IT stack. Additionally, Europcar operates in 140 countries, while PON only in 32, so obtaining a full operational integration would be unrealistic as well as a governance dead end. Instead, PON could treat Europcar as an ecosystem anchor, adopting a borrow logic instead of a build one. For example, by focusing on highly overlapping countries, for example the Benelux and Germany, PON could leverage Europcar fleet, offering a comprehensive mobility bundle to its corporate clients, bundling, for example, with the bike leasing service. This way, Europcar will handle the heavy lifting of fleet maintenance, while PON would just own the customer relationship as well as the data layer.
Now this brings us to the how, the technical architecture that makes this ecosystem work. What we propose is a bifurcated model, the unified spine and the API bridge. On the left, for the assets you fully control, PON Bike, BMS and retail, we build the unified spine. Here we mandate strict data standards and create a single mobility ID. This means a Gazelle lease customer is instantly recognized when they walk into a Volkswagen dealer. This reduces internal stickiness. Now, on the right, for partners like Volkswagen and Europcar, we use an API bridge. We do not attempt to house their data, since that's a governance dead end. Instead, we use APIs to fetch operational insights without triggering ownership disputes. This manages the resource dependence effectively. Now, crucially, this model resolves the trader versus architect tension, as it reframes the conversation from centralization, which scares the business units, to coexistence. The decentralized traders keep their front-end agility, while the architect center builds the shared back-end intelligence. Once the digital backbone is in place, AI becomes the engine that shifts PON from selling hardware to selling high-margin outcomes. We see this unfolding across three horizons. First, optimize the core, as this is immediate. We deploy deep neural networks to predict battery health and residual values. This allows us to stop selling standard repair contracts and start selling uptime guarantees to fleets, turning a maintenance cost center into a recurring revenue stream. Secondly, we drive cross-modal growth, as we launch the Mobility Flat subscription. Because our data spine creates a single view of the customer, we can bundle the bike and the car. You get the Gazelle for the week and the Europe car rental for the weekend, creating a lock-in effect that hardware alone cannot match. Third, the future ecosystem, as we aggregate the massive energy capacity of your electric fleet to sell power back to the grid. There is a fundamental shift in the corporate value-added logic, as we move from being a low-margin trader of metal to a high-margin service provider, stabilizing cash flow against the industry cycles we discussed earlier. Now, this brings us to prioritization. As we cannot chase every opportunity at once, we must be disciplined in sequence. If you look at the top right, there's the winning zone. This is your immediate priority for the next 12 months, as you must build internal data spine and scale BMS in Europe. Why? Because if we fully control these assets, they are cash engines that fund the rest of the transformation. Now, looking at the bottom left, which is the trap, we should not be tempted to attempt a full IT integration with Volkswagen's legacy systems. You do not control them, it is high effort and low return, so must avoid it. Finally, the top left, the strategic bets. The V2G energy services and multimodal bundles we discussed are massive opportunity, but they are lower feasibility right now, as they require data spine to be built first. Now, the funding strategy is clear. Use the capital freed from your industrial divestments, the shrink to grow logic, to fund the winning zone today, so you can afford the strategic bets tomorrow.
This execution requires a disciplined three-phase roadmap to bridge the gap between your current state and the target ecosystem. In phase 1, the first 12 months, we have the foundation. Here, we do not build the roof before the floor. We immediately establish the Data Council and AI ethics boards, and our goal here is to stop the digital fragmentation we diagnosed earlier. In phase 2, months 12 to 36, this is all about scaling. So we take the data standards defined in phase 1 and apply them to scale multi-model services. This is where we execute the winning zone initiatives, where we are expanding BMS and providing the commercial value of the unified data spine through actual cross-business bundle. And lastly, in phase 3, the years 3 to 5, we have the advanced ecosystem. And only once the data spine is mature enough, we industrialize the AI Center of Excellence and launch complex V2G energy pilots. However, even the best roadmap fails if the culture rejects it. The biggest barrier you face is the trader versus architect tension we identified at the start. And to resolve this, we propose an ambidextrous organization. So we must explicitly separate the mandates. Automotive is the exploit engine, which is focusing on maximizing cash flow and efficiency. PON Bike and BMS are the explore engines, which are focusing on growth and digital scaling. Finally, we address the external risk. We establish formal escalation routines for Volkswagen and Europcar partnerships, and we stop hoping for alignment and start governing for it. This turns your internal tension from a liability into a strategic advantage, using the stability of the core to fund the disruption of the future. Finally, governance means nothing without accountability. You cannot manage a platform ecosystem using only a trader's profit and loss. So we propose a unified dashboard that tracks the transition, not just the transaction. We must track the percentages of standardized data streams and API utilization. These two are your leading indicators, and if these are low, the unified backbone is not being built and no downstream value will be materialized. And finally, at the bottom are your customer indicators. The ultimate test of an ecosystem is customer lifetime value and churn. Are clients adopting multi-model bundles or are they staying? These key performance indicators are the final check. They will move PON from aspiration to operational reality, ensuring the corporate center is not just an overhead, cost, but a driver of measurable ecosystem value. To conclude, you have the assets, you have the market focus. If you just build the digital backbone and govern it with this rigor, Pon secures its future as the architect of sustainable mobility. Thank you all for listening, and I hope we can proceed in the future.